If I may have your attention, welcome again to the men's breakfast. It is my honor to introduce Chartorn Renfro. Chartorn, that's a unique name for a unique man, such as it is. The first time I heard Chartorn, I thought, I wonder if that derives from some Nordic god or something. But I'll leave it to you to enlighten those who don't already know the origin.
Okay, good.
Chartorn Renfro is a lifelong participant at Central, joining as a youth in 1961. He was a longtime deacon captain, twice served as active elder, led 4 different Sunday school classes over the years, and has served on various committees including education, outreach, and worship. Chartorn was on Central's staff as volunteer chaplain of St. James Place from 2009 to 2013. I might also add that he has been a dedicated advocate for Alzheimer's care. When Coach Adolph Rupp needed practice players for the 1970-71 University of Kentucky men's basketball team, Chartorn was encouraged to try out by friends who were members of the team. The long shot effort ended with a good story to tell, but no Kentucky jersey. Chartorn is married to Donna and recently celebrated their 49th anniversary. Congratulations. They met in 1974 at a Central singles group and were married in 1976, right over here in the chapel. Donna and Chartorn have 2 daughters, Carol Devine and Sarah Renfro, both disciples of Christ ministers. They have 4 grandchildren, Ben, Eli, Sarah Hack, and Miriam Brown. It is my pleasure to introduce Chartorn Renfro.
Well, I'm going to start off this morning telling you all that I have recently been diagnosed with early onset dementia, and that's a diagnosis that I have feared for some time because I've been in studies at Sanders Brown Center on Aging for almost 8 years now. So anything that seems out of the ordinary, blame it on that. No. All right, Chartorn. What the heck is a Chartorn? I was named for my grandfather, Charles Thomas Corn. He was a county judge executive in Mercer County. And so I was Charles Corn Renfro, and a lot of my relatives over the years, especially early years, called me the double name, Charles Corn, Charles Corn. So when I was learning to talk, I ran that into Chartorn. My parents thought it was cute, and that's why I have Chartorn. And I have some legal documents that actually go by that. I don't know. All right, so I came to Central first time. My parents brought me when I was 2 years old. That's why this picture shows. This is a 2-year-old picture. It was in the Lexington papers, and it was titled Charles Atlas. If anybody knows that. And that's about as far from being. And my earliest memory of ever is being in the toddler room that is now the parlor area, not completely different. I remember the carpeting. But one of the reasons I guess that's stood out is that I didn't learn to see, I didn't realize I was blind until I was in the 4th grade. My 4th grade teacher, Mrs. Nash, she was seeing that I was struggling. So she had a geography test that I knew that I was going to be having that day. Walked in and she said to the class, she said, don't answer any of the questions until you've written down all of the things that are on the three-sided board. So here I was running back and forth, running back and forth, running back and forth. As soon as I got the last question copied, she said, please turn in your papers. And I knew I was. So that afternoon, the principal called the house, and I answered the phone. Said, is your mom home? I said, yes, she is. Can I talk to her? I said, sure. And I got to see an eye doctor shortly afterwards, and the eye doctor says, this guy could have been killed by a car. He couldn't see nothing. I was 420, over 20 in my left eye, and 400 over 20 in my right eye. So quickly, I got glasses. I started seeing everything. I started reading everything. That's all right. One of the, probably the biggest male influence in my life, I don't think there's any question about it, was my dad. He was a multi-talented person. He was a dancer, he was a singer, he was an actor. He could do all of that stuff, but except that stuff didn't make a whole lot of money, so he taught school for most of his adult life. But he showed me perseverance. He didn't teach me how to dance. Because another thing that happened in my life, at 13 weeks, I had spinal meningitis, which was supposed to kill me. My parents were asked to go to Kerr Brothers and start to make arrangements. And they refused to do that. And my doctor found this experimental drug, and they stuck needles in my body until I didn't have places to stick. But I'm here, some 75 years later. So that's part of that. My church environment has been at this place for, especially when I wasn't singing. My parents liked to sit in the balcony, like probably some of you all do too. And Leslie R. Smith was the minister. And his voice, to me, was the voice of God. And because when I started then into the pastor's class and started hearing his voice, and then by that time I was starting to be able to see, had glasses and things like that. I thought, oh, that's where that voice was coming from. All right. Well, there were a couple of times in my life where I was not doing well at all. After my sophomore year, I had been in ROTC, and my career goal was to be a military officer and a military combat officer, go to Vietnam. I was stupid as well. But that's what I wanted to do. So that summer, there was I did my physical for the junior and senior year, and I was in pretty great shape, to be honest, at that time. But they then said, well, we're going to do the eye chart, and they said, okay, take off your glasses. And I said, well, I can't see anything without my glasses. They said, what do you mean you can't see anything? I said, I can't see anything. Look at these Coke bottle lenses. Come on. So they said, well, you can't be in combat. And there are a lot of different jobs you can have in the Army other than combat. Well, so I left ROTC at that point. Then, that next semester, I got an opportunity to try out for the UK men's basketball. My intramural team on campus that previous year had come in second which we were not supposed to come in second. We're a group of guys around the Chevy Chase neighborhood that played together with some frequency, and for that little run during the tournament, we were pretty good. So we were pretty good. And in my ROTC company were Stan Key and Kent Hockenbeck. And I don't know, I'm sure some of the UK fans here remember those names. They were on the basketball team, and they were friends of mine. And Coach Rupp at that time was calling for people to come and try out for the basketball team on campus. I can do this. I can get that on that team. And Coach Rupp had already known me. We lived in the same neighborhood. They already knew me from Memorial Coliseum because I can be pretty loud during basketball games. That might have been an understatement. And so here I was trying out for this. It was a long shot anyway, and I made it to the very last day, and there was a ball that was going out of bounds, and I went to save it in bounds, and I whipped it back and landed on my right shoulder, and it didn't hurt me a great deal, but it did stun me, and I couldn't use my right arm real well the rest of that practice, so I didn't make the team. And so after that, I had two things that were sort of downers in my life. I left the church. I stopped coming to church and started doing some stuff that wasn't necessarily church life. If I was sober in a day, I had forgotten to buy liquor for the Sundays, because at that time, Sundays, you couldn't buy liquor anywhere. So I went through a period of drinking relatively. I drank a lot. Then one day I was at home and the phone rang, and it was Ron Graham. Does any of you all know that name? He, dean of the seminary, didn't have a clue that he knew me. I didn't know the name. He said, I've noticed that you haven't been coming to the center. I said, no, I haven't. He said, but we're missing you here. And I said, no, you're not. And he said, yes. And he said, I've got a job for you. So I started ushering back the sanctuary. Started doing that, and then since I was back there, I started serving communion. I wasn't a deacon, I wasn't elected to anything, but I started doing that, and sort of started coming back in to the church, and that turned out to be a good thing for me. Went to a singles group that Dave Hyatt, who now lives in St. Louis, was leading, and one day I was actually facilitating this meeting that we were having, and this woman came into the meeting, and she had long brown hair. She had a sweater on that was, it showed some of her attributes very well. And so here I was in the middle of talking, but she was about 10 minutes late, and so I was struck dumb. Couldn't talk, which is unusual for me. So here, that was my first time meeting Donna Devine. Donna and I became friends, and Donna was a mother of a 7-year-old at that time, and I was nowhere ready to be a father, so there was no thought of me even pursuing any relationship with her. So, but Donna kept asking me to do things. One night she asked me to come set up a display of pictures from the Vietnam War that showed some of the atrocities. This photographer had gotten approval to do that, her staff, and Donna said, "Come and help me set that up." I said, "Well, can I bring my girlfriend?" Because at that time I was dating a girl whose family was about as dysfunctional as my family was. My parents, they were both in the theater, and they were both very dramatic. And I never did understand that until they were later in life. But, and then she had parents that were married, but they lived in different houses. So we were a good pair, and we knew we just could have some fun together and stuff like that. We were not in any way going to get married. So here she comes, and we set this display up quite a bit. And I leave out that door right there. We got about 15 feet out the door, my girlfriend and myself. And she turns around and she hits me with both hands. "You are the stupidest man alive." I said, "You knew that?" She said, "What's that? What now?" She said, "That woman in there is in love with you." "Oh, no, she's got all sorts of guys." She said, no, she is in love with you." So, in a couple of days, I called Donna up and said, "Would you like to go out with me?" She said, "Yes, I would." Now, I've never been one to hide the fact that I'm a cheap person, a cheapo. And she knew that. She'd known me long enough to know a lot about my personality. I had a coupon for a restaurant, buy one, get one free. Oh, it's a place down on Short Street that's no longer there. But we go there, we have a great time, and there's a pinball machine. And so she loves to tell this story because she beat the crud out of me in pinball. And she knew that it was getting under my skin. But after that date, we sort of hung around together for a long time. And as Tim said, 49 years and 10 days ago, we were married right there in that chapel. And we're still there, still married. And you might notice this thing here. I'm not really an escape convict. This isn't a monitor to keep me deaf. Donna and I are participating in a sleep study. It's a partner study. I don't understand what they wanted to find out about it. But we are up for any type of medical studies that they have out there. So that's why I'm wearing this. She's wearing one at home right now, I guess, as well. So, but that sort of was changed the trajectory of my life because I became a father of a 9-year-old girl. How many people in here probably think I was ready to be a father of a 9-year-old girl? You were. Yeah, you were. Well, and Carol and I have had some talks over the years about that because she already had it. She still had a father who was living. Donna had divorced her father some time ago, and so that was always a tension as well. But it worked out. That was a good thing. So this church has definitely meant a lot to me. Right after I retired in 2009, Bill Embry and Michael Moody asked me to come eat lunch with him. And I knew this wasn't a free lunch. You didn't go to lunch with Bill Emery and think not being asked something of. And they said, we'd like you to be the chaplain to St. James. What are you all talking about? They said, we've seen you interact with the community downtown. Bill Adams was the current chaplain at that time. He was getting ready to move to Phoenix, Arizona for work, and he was leaving the position. And Bill and I had had a Sunday school class at St. James for 2 years. And it was a really good class. And many of you know that I worked for Social Security most of my career, and that was my career. And the working at Social Security became an issue because I didn't want to tell anybody at St. James that's where I worked, and for good reason. Because one day I was at the office and I heard somebody in the front of the reception area say, I'm going to get preferential treatment today. I'm in Chartorn Renfro's Sunday school class. Whoa! I run to the front. I've really got good hearing too. I can't see diddly, but I've got really good hearing. So here, I run to the front, and it's one of our Sunday school people, and so we had to stop that Sunday school class. But it was a good one while it lasted. So Bill Embry thought that giving me 2 months of retirement was good enough, and I would, jump at the chance to be chaplain at St. James. But then, so I told her, and I said, I've just been asked to be chaplain at St. James Place. She said, you know that doesn't pay anything. I said, yes, I told them. And I said, they'll get exactly what they paid for. And I was there for 4 years. I am still the longest serving chaplain at St. James because they never did replace me. I don't understand that, but because they did need somebody in that role. And I was good at it. I pat myself on the back too bad. But there were times that I was needed in that role. And due to the Rotary Club, they provided Legends baseball tickets to folks at St. James. And so I would take a group of the guys and gals over to the baseball stadium for the games. And one night that got to be problematic because usually when I would tell them, I said, well, we're going to go back as soon as the game's over, we'll meet here at the bus, and we'll go back. But if you don't want to go back to the bus, just tell me. Everybody was adults, and I said, just tell me, and go on. So one night after the game, everybody's back in the bus except for this one person. And so I started asking, have you seen so-and-so? And they said, no. So I waited 15, 20 minutes. He never showed up. And so I drove them back to St. James, and then I just got in my car and drove over to the stadium. I said, gave the folks there at the stadium my predicament, and do you mind if I go and search the stadium? They said, no, not at all. So I did, and there was nobody there. I thought, oh, I don't want to really lose somebody. And so I called on and said, I won't be home until I find this guy. She said, well, you want me to? No. I don't know. So at 3:45 a.m., I'm walking on 3rd Street. And I see it. He was by himself. So I go over and I said, did you forget to tell me you wanted to come in on the bus? He goes, Oh, I did, I'm sorry. I said, you're okay? And he said, oh, more than okay.
Oh, no.
I said, okay. He said, yeah. Did you not see me leave with? I said, no, I didn't see you leave. So he had found himself some companionship, and I was okay. I didn't lose something. But another thing that popped from being chaplain at St. James Place, I was also working part-time at Millwood Funeral Home. And this was April 5th, 2010. I was helping my wife's circle set up a yard sale for a fundraiser they were having. Something, I don't remember what they were doing as far as that, but this was at 5 till 8 in the morning. And my phone, I had a cell phone at that time, my phone rings from, it's Millward, and they said, we need you to conduct a funeral service. What? They said, well, you are a chaplain, aren't you? I told you I was a pretend chaplain. And they said, we don't care. And I said, well, I haven't met the family. I don't know anything about this. When is the service? Well, is it 10 o'clock? And I said, well, the family, are they going to let me know a little bit? They're meeting you at 9 o'clock or Southland location. Oh, thanks for telling me. So I go to Southland and meet the family. Turned out that the person who had passed away was a senior when I was a sophomore at Henry Clay High School. He was a Vietnam vet, which was a passion of mine. And he also died from Alzheimer's. So I got a few stories from the family, and in talking to the family about 15 minutes, I had a 30-minute interview. And they told me that, no, we won't have anybody show up. And there were 50 people there, and thanks to Kirk's wife, Jan, I had seen her do enough funeral services, and I really liked the way that when she did a funeral service, whether you knew the person or not, you felt like you did. So I had asked some of those questions that I thought she might ask of the family. And the family was just thrilled with what I did. And that was the first of 31 funerals that I did for Miller, which still sort of boggles my mind. The next one was a person who had passed away in Bradenton, Florida. They had a family plot at Lexington Cemetery, and she had a severe illness, and she had become an atheist. She didn't grow up that way, but she cursed God. Apparently she had gotten very, it's gotten very painful for her in her illness. So in talking to her husband, I said, well, there will be people at this service, though, that are of faith, right? He said, oh, yes. But I want to honor both her wishes and the people who were there. And so I talked to him probably for an hour. And they said, oh, well, we won't have very many people there. Well, this woman had been an office manager of a cosmetology, that's not right, dermatology office in Marietta, Georgia. They closed down that office for the service. So the people from that office came. There were 125 people trying to get under a tent that was good 15. So we sort of had to do that. And it was quite impressive, and I did a good job. I'm not patting myself on the back too bad, but I kept seeing people walk in, but I wanted to honor this person's wishes. Then 3 weeks later, and this woman had a strange, or not strange, but an unusual, with a name like Chartorn, but she had an unusual last name. 3 weeks, I walked into Millward, and there was another person with that name. I said, what is that? And they said, well, they're requesting you do that service. Well, who was this? That was the mother-in-law of the person that you just had done before. And she died in San Diego, California. And so I did that service. And I was the person that Millward went to for people who were sort of on the margins, or people who had dropped out of church, or things like that. Because Millward had 2 ordained ministers on staff to do eulogies, but they would kick the ones that they weren't comfortable with. They'd say, hey, no, I didn't. Are there any questions that you all have of me at this point? Because I know my time is, I've probably run over a little bit.
I noticed the UK.
Yes. Oh, well, I did bring some, this UK thing, yes, this was during the COVID season. I was at every UK basketball game. I was going to be at every game anyway because I was an usher that go down there. This are my uniform for the Olympic Games. And I even called Michael Renfro yesterday and asked if it was okay to tell this story. He helped me get to be an usher at the Olympic Games because this I had arranged a place to stay in Atlanta, and the person I had arranged those accommodations with, I found out that 7 days before the Olympics that he had Alzheimer's, and he didn't remember ever talking to me. And the room was no longer available. So I called Brookhaven Christian Church. I knew that name from Michael Rentham had just come here and I knew he came from Brookhaven. So I called there and I talked to the minister, and I said, this is going to sound crazy, but it is. Is there any place I could stay in the church? I do custodial work, but I'm volunteering for the Olympics. I'm the perimeter security for the Georgia Dome, World Congress Center, and the Omni. And you're doing this from Lexington, she said. This is Ann Bonnie. I don't know whether any of you all know that name or not. But she listened to me for a while. She said, can I call you back? I said, sure. So she immediately calls Michael Rentham, who's now working here. And said, hey there, I just got this strange call from this guy. And he gave me a good reference. And he didn't know me from diddly because I wasn't in the choir, but I guess he asked enough about who I was and all that stuff. So I was able to be then, she called me back and she said, I've got a better idea. Our son had just left for college and we have an empty room. Would you mind staying there? Yeah. I said, no. I said, how much The only thing I want to ask you to do is help set up the turnaround for the marathon. Our church and Oglethorpe College are right at the concern for the turnaround for the marathon. And we've got to set up some bleachers. Can you help them set up with that the day that happens? I said, absolutely. So that's how I was able to go ahead and do this and get that all done. But, so I have Michael recommend. Thank you for asking that question. Because I bring all these props, don't talk about it. I can't do that anymore. One of the usher's responsibilities is to help get people in and out during an emergency. And I can't even get myself in and out during an emergency. And so, I just don't. Anybody else? And thanks for John showing up today. John and I share a birthday, Talk Like a Pirate Day, September the 19th. and John was in one of my Sunday school classes. Anybody else have any questions? It's time for me to quit anyway. Thank you all very much.